Well, greetings, class, and welcome to Biblical Counseling 4306, Wisdom Literature, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. I have had all three of you in various classes, so I'm going to breeze through this. Just remind you, I was born and raised in East Tennessee, went to Georgia Tech for an electrical engineering degree, lured down to Florida by Harris Corporation, had a 35-year career there as a defense contractor. Met my wife Susan on the volleyball court. We're both volleyball enthusiasts. Went through some counseling with our pastor that got me very interested in counseling, in particular in the financial arena. We got married in 1987. I got trained in 88 to be a financial biblical counselor, and in 91 became a seminar instructor for Larry Burkett, and for the next 20 years traveled around the country teaching seminars at various churches on how to have a financial counseling ministry. Larry Burkett introduced me to ACBC. The executive director at the time was Howard Eyrich, and he gave us a one-day crash course in biblical counseling. Fell in love with that. Later went through the fundamentals myself in 2004, got certified by 2010, and developed a biblical counseling training center in our church in 2015. I was introduced to ABU through my daughters, Jacqueline and Jessica. I know at least one of you knows Jacqueline. Probably might know Jessica. Jessica wasn't a biblical counseling major, but they were both volleyball players, and here's their picture with the team from 2019, finished third in the nation that year. Congratulations, last year, volleyball team finished in first. But Jacqueline's the one on that end, Jessica's the one on that end, the two 6-footers on the team. Biblical counseling, as you know, because you've taken a lot of biblical counseling classes, are based on the sufficiency of Scripture, progressive sanctification, and the Bible's instructions on how to grow and change. As you know, in this video, I go through the syllabus. The description of this course is, it offers you an expositional and topical study of the books of wisdom, the books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, particularly as they relate to counseling. The required text, of course, is the Bible, but we also have 2 free downloads. Thank you to Dr. Thomas L. Constable, a theologian who has spent a lifetime writing commentaries on books, and he has all the books of the Bible available that he has kept up to date. He updates them throughout the year. And anytime you go, you can see when the last update was. The last update on this one was 2026, so he's still at it. And there's a link to download those. I'd encourage you to do that. I did already download them, and I put them in Canvas in the Week 1 course materials, part of the modules. Then I have 2 additional recommended texts, additional commentaries on Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Takes 2 full books to do that. I was able to get these 2 books in Logos, so you can download the others 2 for free in a PDF format, and these 2 books are available if you pay the fees for the Logos piece. And they're not required. I don't have any assignments out of there. But if you're a biblical counselor and you want to have a good reference library, especially of the books of wisdom, which is a lot of what we're talking about in the counseling room, these are 2 good books to have. I always put a link to the ABU library and the ecampus.com book, which is a good place to easily, quickly, and cheaply find all kinds of good materials. So who was Dr. Constable? Dr. Thomas Constable. There's a brief biography of him at this webpage at Plano Bible Chapel. He's a member there. I think he's an elder there. He has degrees from Moody Bible College, has a bachelor's from Wheaton and a master's of theology, and his PhD from Dallas Theological Seminary. In 1966, he became a teacher, professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he'd served in that role till 2011, 45 years. He was the department chairman of Bible Exposition from 1996 to 2011. So a good 25 years he served in that capacity. I'm sorry, that's 15 years in that capacity. He's an author of commentaries on all 66 books of the Bible, and you can find them at that link in the planobiblechapel.org. In 1968, 2 years after he started teaching there, he founded the Plano Bible Chapel. So he was the church planter that started the church that he's still in today. And he was pastor there from 68 until 1980. His life story can be heard on a Word of Life Learn the Word podcast. So I put a link to that. I would encourage you to go listen to that. It's worth the hour of your time to hear an interview with him talking through all the things that led him to create these materials that you're going to now have access to and going to be digging deeply into as we read through Proverbs twice and we read through Ecclesiastes in this class. Now, the two books that are recommended but not required are in the Logos link that I've put at the top on the left-hand side of our landing page for the Wisdom Literature, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes Spring 2026 Block C webpage. I did put the ABU ebooks link there also, even though we don't have any books there. It's just a habit I have to put both of those there because some of the classes I teach do have books in both places. And if you click on the Logos, you will see here are the two Waltke books on Proverbs that are available in soft copy, so very searchable if you're looking for additional research, especially in the papers you're writing. You're going to be writing a lot of papers this time around. There's a lot of reading and a lot of writing in this class. As always, I put the Jeremy Pierre How to Write a Good Research paper out there, the Chicago Manual of Style, and the CMOS Hop Talk for Students tip sheets. The outcomes that we expect you to have upon successful completion of the class, that you will have an understanding of the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes as they relate to everyday life, especially in counseling, to demonstrate an understanding of the cultural meaning behind some of the wise sayings in order to more accurately discern how they would be applied here in the 21st century, and to apply the content of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes to particular counseling situations, and fourth, to be able to construct a list of topics of special interest for use in a counseling setting. Now these progress indicators, there's 5 categories. This now is in every syllabus, so I'm going to breeze through this pretty quickly. The university has goals for your biblical competence, for your spiritual growth as you go through these, for your evangelistic application, and for personal development. And above all of those things is the umbrella of academic excellence in all that we do. Under biblical competence, there's 5 different areas that they want to make sure you know how to use the Bible as a tool in your everyday life, not only to grow and change yourself, but to be able to minister to others. And under the spiritual growth area, there's 4 additional goals regarding worshiping and service and prayer and just the general application of biblical principles in your life. And for evangelism, 4 principles there for being able to exegete the word well, to use good hermeneutics so you have a good solid understanding of it, to be able to articulate that both verbally and in writing, and to demonstrate the fruits of the Spirit as you apply God's word to your life. And then fourth, under personal development, there's 5 more bullets, recognizing academic, social, and spiritual gifts, strengths, and weaknesses, relating to others in love, effectively communicating, demonstrating self-discipline, and engaging in Christian ministry as God leads. And then for academic excellence, we want you to be able to demonstrate what you've learned back to me through the quizzes and discussion boards and special assignments, etc., that we have in this class. I want you to be able to analyze some complex problems, to communicate information, and especially in writing, and to read skillfully and critically for setting you up for a lifetime of learning, and researching and organizing present information both verbally and in writing. Now that's at the Arlington Baptist University level. There are additional goals down at the School of Ministry level. One is good exegesis and good teaching skills. Second is about ecclesiology and global mission, demonstrating your knowledge of the Bible and the historical foundations of the local church. Third, to apply these kind of principles in a church leadership or administration kind of role. Yet amazing how much good business information there is in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, how to structure things well and lead things well and organize. And last, ethical integrity in ministry practice. All work must be neat, grammatically correct. As you know, I'm looking for a good portion of your grade. Some of the rubrics that I've set up this time are 15% on format and 15% on style. So that's 30% of your grade that has to do with how you write, and then the other 70% is the content of what you wrote. Everything's due at midnight on Saturdays, just like we always have been, 1 minute to midnight, technically, 11:59 p.m. Central. Two exceptions, as always. The discussion boards need to be turned in by Thursday, so you have time to respond to 2 classmates. Those of you that had other classes with me, so I used to just do 1 classmate. I now require 2. So half your credit is what you wrote, and the other half is what you responded to other people. And if you only do 1, you only get half of that. So don't miss out on any of those points. Get those things in, get them in on time. The second exception, besides the discussion board being due on Thursday, is the last week of class. As always, it ends on a Friday. So everything else is due on Saturdays, week 1 through 7, but week 8, everything's due on a Friday. So you got to cram and get that done. Now in this class, I'm doing the weekly exercises on everything except in the 8th week, since you have the big final project. There is journaling that week, but there's no quizzes, no anything else but the final. So hopefully that eases the stress of that last week when everything's due at once. Late work will be accepted past the due date, but as you know, I do a 10% per day penalty, so the sooner you get it in, the better. If it's late, and if it's more than 10 days late, don't bother. It's not going to be worth any points unless you really just want to have the experience of learning and reading and writing what you're supposed to have written more than 10 days ago, but there'll be no credit for that. We do expect you to participate in class. Lack of participation will cause a decrease in your grade. And your first assignment is to watch the academic integrity video. You're probably having to do this in all your classes. And pass the quiz with a 10 out of 10. And you get to take that quiz over and over until you get 10 out of 10. So do that. So in the syllabus, we got 6 different areas where we're doing some learning in this class. One is the required reading. There are written lectures, just like we've done before, mostly from Dale Canwright, some of them from Kathy Wiseman from the past. That's part of your reading, but there's also the Proverbs themselves and the Ecclesiastes verses themselves, and there's some articles each week about how to apply these wisdom principles. Then there's a discussion board. The questions in the discussion board come from the readings, so it's good to do your readings and journaling first and before we do the discussion boards. Every week, no, not every week, 5 out of the 8 weeks we have quizzes that they're a simple quiz, and they only cover the material for that week. So be looking for those. Now every week except the last week, so that's 7 of the 8 weeks, you're going to be writing a 2-page paper on something. There's also a special assignment, which is often another 2-page paper you're writing. So like I said, there's a lot of writing going on in this class. There's 7 of each of those, and then there's a major research paper, much larger, in lesson 8 for the final lesson. So that's what it looks like in a simplified version. There's journaling, discussions, papers, quizzes, and special assignments. There's 8 journaling opportunities, 7 papers and discussion boards, 5 quizzes, 7 special assignments, and 1 final. The journaling, I know some of you don't like the journaling, and I've made it a little smaller this time, so if you want to blow it off, I understand. It's worth 4% of your overall grade. The discussion boards add up to 7% of your grade. The papers also add up to 28%, so they're a little heavier. The quizzes add up to 20%, and the special assignments add up to 21%. So all that adds up to 1,000 points for 100% of the grade. As you know, we've shifted to pluses and minuses on the letter grades, so there's the breakdown of how we'll determine what your grade is. If you are going to need to bow out of this class, you will get a grade of I, which stands for incomplete. If you are if you're passing at the time you drop out, you'll be given an IP, incomplete passing, which means you can resume and continue. If you're flunking at the time, then it's an IF, which meant you were flunking and you need to start over on the class. As I mentioned, late work is accepted with 10% penalties. I'm not going to take technical difficulties or your Wi-Fi went out or we had a power failure as an excuse. So just try to get things in a day early. That way you have some margin in case something goes wrong. If you need to appeal to the grade, sometimes I do make mistakes when grading. If you don't understand a question on the quiz, or if you disagree with my comments that I made about your written paper, appeal to me. I'll change it if it was an oversight on my part. If not, and you're still not happy, you can appeal to the Office of Academic Affairs. This is all covered in page 25 and 26 in the catalog. I am required to give you a final exam, and this time it's going to be in the form of a large research paper, and that's due in the last week. And again, this is a look at the load in a simplified way. Every week you have a journal, all 8 weeks. The quizzes are in week 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7. So week 2 and 6 you get a week off on the quizzes. There's 7 discussion boards, 7 of these 2-page papers, 7 of these special assignments, and 1 final exam in the 8th week. So you notice the 8th week just has the journal and the final. So I've kind of put, you're ranging between 2 and 5 things that are due every single week, including 5 things this week. So you got to get busy. I put the dates starting on the 17th, ending on March the 6th there. I put the accumulated points, how they're spread out across the whole 8 weeks, and the cumulative points. That shows you how you build it up to 1,000 points. Here is the actual schedule. Week 1 is titled The Fear of the Lord. We'll be reading Proverbs 1 through 15. So half the book of Proverbs need to be read by the end of this week. And then the other half will be next week. And then we're going to repeat that in weeks 3 and 4. And then in week 5 we'll move on to Ecclesiastes. And you'll be reading the commentaries at the same time. Constable's intro, and he's got an outline structure, and I put it that way because depending on how you downloaded it, the page numbers might not correlate to the way I've downloaded it, especially since he's making changes from time to time. But that's why I put the ranges in terms of the outline that he has for the book. So, first week is about the fear of the Lord, second week's about moral purity, third week's about money, fourth week's about communications, fifth week's about training up your children. Then in week 6, we look at the intro to Ecclesiastes and continuing in Ecclesiastes for the remaining 3 weeks. There's articles that are thrown in there too. So, participation, we talked about this. You must participate in the class. If you don't sign in the first week, I'll be hunting for you, and if I can't find you till week 2, we're going to go ahead and administratively remove you from the class, but I know all 3 of you, that's not going to happen. Online students are expected to engage with the materials as you're writing these things. Convince me that you read the materials. Artificial intelligence, I understand that it can be very helpful, especially with writing papers, but I am going to ask that you not use any artificial intelligence. And that includes chat, but not limited to, ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, Elicit, Gemini, DALL-E, Synthesia, and the Adobe Firefly. So write your own stuff. And there is built into Canvas a AI detector that'll give me a grade, percentage probability that this was generated or influenced by AI. So if I suspect you're using it, we're going to have a conversation about it. As usual, each week I'll do this short video looking at last week's assignments, this week's assignments, and a sneak peek at next week's assignments. You'll have reading and notes and textbooks and other resources. Every week a journal and discussion, except the last week no discussion. A quiz, 5 of the 8 weeks. There is no midterm, or there is a final, and there is the special assignments as well. For journaling, all of you have done this for me before, so you know what it's like. I'm wanting the date and time that you read each item, the title of the book, audio or video, and if there's a chapter, I want the chapter number and the chapter name, all in the heading part of the notes. Then I want you to answer these 3 questions. What are the key points of what I just read? How do they generally apply to my situation? And what specifically am I going to do as a result of what I read? Journal on each thing separately. So if there's 5 different things, there'll be 5 different sets of those 3 questions. For assignment number 1, complete the Module 1 quiz and get a score of 10 out of 10. You'll be reading, in addition to Proverbs 1 through 15, the written lecture, Fear of the Lord .doc. And I'm going to go ahead and, since those are in a weird order, just fill up the page there. Proverbs 1 through 15, read from, in the Constable commentary, read from the introduction to Roman numeral 1b12, which is titled The Lure of Adultery, chapter 7 in Dr. Constable's notes. Then I have 3 additional articles. Do the Proverbs Promise Too Much by Steve Cornell. Second, The Fear of God and the Fear of Man by Dan Franklin of Life Bible Fellowship Church. And then third, How to Have a Healthy Fear of God by Eric Thones and Jeremy Treat. So journal on all of those, do the discussion board, the paper and the special assignment, and the quiz. For the discussion board, as you know, this is the biggest part we have for interacting with each other. So please treat it very enthusiastically. Really read what the other person is saying and respond to it in a way that's supportive or extends it or politely disagrees. I'm not going to be giving credit for, boy, I really like what you said, kinds of things that have no content in them. Show me you are using some critical thinking here. It'll be based on the completeness of the response, the application of your knowledge, and the support for your opinion, and the strength of your response. For discussion board number 1, post to the discussion board an idea that makes common sense to you, but is challenged by a proper understanding of what Proverbs teaches. Identify the address in Proverbs that you're citing. For example, it makes sense for us to only choose friendships with people that are friendly towards us. And yet Proverbs says you must show yourself to be a friend in order to have friends. Contrast. So respond to at least 2 classmates with a thoughtful response, supporting or respectfully disagreeing with their post. Then, for paper number 1, briefly describe in 1 to 2 pages how you would teach Proverbs 1:7 in a counseling setting to a 15-year-old student who's been struggling in her relationship with her stepmother. The rubric, as I mentioned earlier, 70% content, 15% style, and 15% format. Then for the special assignment, write a 2-page paper telling of an experience you personally had when you allowed your own wisdom and desires to take precedence over God's Word. In other words, a violation of Proverbs 3, 4 through 5. Lean not on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord, but lean not on your own understanding. Tell about the consequences that happened or the ultimate blessing or lessons you learned from the experience. And this can be something that you have done or counsel you've given to someone that wasn't right, as an example. Again, content 70%, style and format 15% each. Next week, sneak peek. Lecture number 2, The History of Christians in Psychology is Wrong. Lesson number 2 is Moral Purity. Read Proverbs 16 through 31. Read from sections Roman numeral 1, C, 13, which is the function of wisdom, through chapter 8 to Roman numeral 2, A.8, which is further advice for wise living, chapters 14 and 15 in Constable's Notes on Proverbs. Then read these 2 additional articles. One of them has 6 different parts with 6 different links, so it's going to take a little time. Serious Faith with Moral Purity. And then last, the 40 consequences of adultery. Complete quiz 2, the special assignment, the paper, the journal, and the discussion board. For the discussion board, watch a sitcom that is showing on primetime television. Make a note of the sexual content and write a 2-page document and post it on the discussion board. And I'm going to give you double credit for this because this is going to be your special assignment, but it's also going to be your entry for the discussion board. So you'll save some time by turning it in both places. You still have to turn it in both places, but it can be the same paper. Then write at least 2 responses to other students' postings. So for the paper, do an internet search by typing the words moral purity in your search engine and pick one article and then write a 2-page summary and upload your response here. You can say what you liked, what you didn't like, points of agreement, disagreement, etc. And then, as I mentioned, special assignment's going to be the same as a discussion board. Watch a sitcom that's showing on primetime television. Write a 2-page paper on the sexual content in the sitcom. Content 70%, style and format 15% each. Here we are. We're going into week 1 of 8 weeks together to discover the wisdom literature that is contained in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. If you have any questions, text me or email me, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. God bless you.